My dear friends, Jai Bhim to all of you. Today we are remembering the Poona Pact that was entered into in between Baba Saheb Ambedkar and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The unfinished struggle for social justice and equality from Poona Pact to present by Dalits Still Lack a Political Voice. My friends, September 24th is a dark day in Indian history of Dalits. On that day, that is on 24 September 1932, the infamous Poona Pact was signed. The Poona Pact robbed away the right of the depressed classes, that is SCs and STs, to have separate electorates to elect their political representatives by the communal award passed by the British government, which we got as a result of great and sustained efforts of the father of Indian Constitution, Baba Saheb Ambedkar. M.K. Gandhi went on fast unto death in protest against the communal award in Irwada jail, which gave the scheduled caste separate electorates. The communal award, which was passed in the month of August 1932 by the British, and the subsequent Poona Pact mark a turning point in modern Indian politics, a moment when a radical claim for political autonomy by the depressed classes, now known as Dalits or scheduled caste, was overturned by the moral and political pressure campaign led by Gandhi. In August 1932, the British government announced the communal award, a formula that expanded reserved representation for depressed classes, untouchables, and crucially retained the separate electorates for these groups. Separate electorates meant that voters from a group would elect their own representatives, ensuring that the chosen candidates were accountable primarily to that community rather than to the general electorate. Baba Saheb Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was forced to compromise by sacrificing the right of his community to save the life of Gandhi for the depressed life of Gandhi. Ambedkar himself later described that the Poona Pact as a political disaster for the depressed classes because it surrendered the stronger guarantee, that is separate electorates, for a weaker one that left real authority with the upper caste voters and leaders. History documents and Ambedkar's own speeches reinforce his assent was obtained in a coercive atmosphere, not in a meeting of equals, and represented a tactical retreat under the duress. The Poona Pact 1932, often celebrated as a compromise between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, was in fact a historic setback for the Dalit caste. By replacing the separate electorates with giant electorates and reserved seats, by reserving certain seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, it diluted the effective political representation of the most oppressed classes and made political representation of SC/STs only nominal on paper and decorative, while the true political voice and autonomy are absent. And wealthy classes, upper castes, are dominating the fate of the reserved constituencies and getting their henchmen elected from the reserved constituencies. Even if they are elected, they are not allowed to speak for Dalit caste or represent their grievances. How the Dalits lost their political voice? Under separate electorate by way of communal award, Dalits would have chosen their own representatives accountable only to them. After the Poona Pact, however, the candidates in reserved constituencies, whether it may be local bodies or the legislative bodies like Assembly and Parliament, must secure backing from the upper caste dominated parties. This has ensured that most Dalit representatives are hand-picked yes-men of local dominant caste leadership in all major political parties rather than independent voices of their community. In practice, the Dalits gained numbers by way of representation, by way of reserved constituencies in legislative bodies, but lost autonomy, making reservations a little more than symbolic. A little more than symbolic. I repeat, it's only a little more than symbolic. And the reality today, what happened? In reserved constituencies today, do we elect our own leaders? No. Party bosses, mostly from the dominant caste, decide who will be the candidate. They select those who obey them. Then, not those who raise the voice of Dalit people. That is why so many of our representatives remain silent on atrocities, unemployment, and humiliation. They are there in name, but not in spirit. The politics of division, dominant caste leaders and parties have systematically divided Dalits along subcaste and religious lines to prevent the rise of united leadership. This fragmentation weakens Dalit bargaining power, political bargaining power, ensures dependency on mainstream parties, and keeps leadership restricted to the pliant individuals rather than intellectuals or self-respecting voices. Continuing social discrimination, despite constitutional safeguards and despite the reserved constituencies, Dalits continues to face discrimination and violence in everyday life, in education, employment, access to resources, and even basic human dignity. Political subordination has worsened this. As representatives, they rarely speak out forcibly against caste atrocities or systematic neglect. Then, what is the awakening call? The time has come for Dalits and all oppressed sections to reflect on the unfinished struggle of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Reservation without self-representation is hollow. Unity across caste and religious sub-identities is essential to resist co-option and manipulation. Genuine leadership must come from within the communities. Individuals who speak with courage, independence, and commitment to justice, not those who act as a mouthpieces of dominant powers. Then what is the conclusion for this? The Poona Pact shows how the moral blackmail and political compromise can suffer the aspirations of the marginalized generations. Today, Dalits must reclaim Ambedkar vision of dignity, equality, and self-respect, not through dependence on upper caste patronage, but through the assertion of their own independent political voice. Without awakening and assertion of their own independent political voice, the reservations will remain only on the paper, and untouchability in new forms will persist. It is time to awaken. And time to unite, time to refuse division among ourselves on the basis of subcaste or religion. Then time to demand that our representatives be true representatives, not voiceless slaves. Time to stand up against the discrimination, untouchability, and injustice wherever we see it. The Poona Pact may have weakened our voice in the year 1932, but in the year 2025 and beyond, we cannot remain silent. Let us rise together, reclaim our dignity, and forget all our subcaste and religious differences, and ensure that the Ambedkar's dream of liberty, equality, and fraternity becomes a reality for every Dalit and for all the oppressed people of India. Jai Bhim, Jai Bharat, Jai Constitution.